Welcome. This is Dog Central. It is a Wednesday afternoon. We are here with our dear friend, Mr. Josh Hancher, aka Dog Stats, the Sultan of Stats, Mr. Josh. Dude, it's game week. It's Wednesday. We have almost made it in a little over 24 hours. We'll have like a real P5 versus P5 football game on our televisions. How does it feel?
Man, I'm ready for it. It's been, I don't know, maybe it's because the last few years have just been, as a content provider, for lack of a better word, I've just consumed more college football off season than I really ever thought I would. So, and it's great. Yeah, I mean, it's great. I mean, it's obviously a sport 365. So, but I am ready for some actual football. And last week was a little bit of a tease, really, as best you could say. There was a couple sicko games that were interesting, but the two Power 5 teams that, I guess three, sorry, Vanderbilt, didn't really put on much of a show in terms of they just kind of, USC had some, oh, wait, we couldn't watch USC. Sorry. I guess I don't have the Pac-12.
I did.
You did. Yeah. You got the Pac-12 network, you sicko.
I have like 4 alternates on the Pac-12 network.
I almost did it, but I was like, no, I'm not gonna do it. So, but yeah, I'm ready for this week. The next two, we got some good games. We got some good games this weekend. We got some good weekend games week 2. So ready to see it.
Yeah, and we get the Sunday, Monday specials here on opening weekend. Like it's 5 straight days of college football, and it in a way that I don't think really any other sport does. It kind of is a celebration of the sport. I feel like later on in the year we'll get like, I think there's a college or pro game on like every night for like a 5-week period in October and November, but like you gotta really dig into the bottom of the barrel to do that. I mean, we're talking like some really bad 3-6 versus 2-7 MAC teams and shit. So I'm pumped that not only do we have games on Sunday and Monday, but like they're games that I actually am interested in watching. And same on Thursday, man. It's one thing I feel like has changed a lot in the last like 5 or 10 years since the NFL decided to start playing Thursday night. Was we don't really get like marquee college games on Thursdays anymore. And when I was coming up and for a long time, like there were some very big like SEC games and nationally significant games that happened on Thursdays, and we don't get to watch those anymore.
Yeah, and I remember a bunch of big FSU games back in the day. It seemed like they played on Thursday, and
yeah,
absolutely. I mean, Thursday night is starting off with Florida and Utah is probably the premier game tomorrow night. Not going to talk about the Kennesaw team game that's tomorrow night, but they're playing too for all the.
Let's go, Owls. Yeah.
I can't even I've literally never heard of the team they're playing. I've never heard of them. So it's an interesting schedule the Owls have, and they're for some of you may or may not know, they're not actually in a conference. They're only playing 9 games. So you're gonna there's your Owls update when I come on. So anyway,
we're gonna have the Owl Minute every week with Josh.
Yes.
So we are here today to talk SEC East. With obviously a pretty heavy Georgia slant, and give some college football playoff predictions in the middle of all this. I'm sure we'll hit a little week 1 action type things. As we jump into the SEC East, first and foremost, we're going to be again looking at the college football advanced stat preview that you and Chris Marler put together. If you haven't bought this yet, well, you missed out, but it's not too late. And there's stuff in here that like I can promise you I'll be referencing all season long. So still a value there. But Josh, is there anything you want to say about the guide here that you put together one last time before the season starts?
I cannot lie. I'm actually quite proud of it.
Should be.
And I'm not I'm not an encyclopedia of football, names and maybe numbers a little bit, but as I tracked all these this week and last week, all the depth charts came out. I mean, I got them all in there. I was real proud. It took a lot of work, and it is not a bad way. I think I'm going to just drop it down to like $3 or $4 or something. So if you're looking for a guide with all the stats in it, I'll drop a little discount code for everybody this last week if you want to. It's worth $4. I can't lie. So thank you for pimping it, Graham.
Definitely worth that, dude.
The Dog Central community was very, very high quality, a number of customers. So shout out to all of my friends over there at Dog Central, and lots of people checked it out. Some of the pros, I don't want to name drop, but some pros guys got some good feedback from them, yourself included. So there it is, dogstats.com. You can get it. I'll drop a discount code after the show.
Yeah, check it out, man. I've looked at that thing almost every day over the last month or so. No bullshit. So it's incredible. While we're paying bills, real quick, let me get this in on the front of the show. Home Field Apparel. Wonderful, wonderful people, wonderful brand. I'm wearing one of their soft, comfortable, excellently fitting shirts right now. They are our sponsor for this show, for everything we do at dogcentral.com. And they've been really, really good to us, so much so that they've equipped us with a 20% off code that you can see on the bottom of the screen there if you're watching on video. And it's all caps, dogs, DAWGS, Central 23 for 20% off on homefieldapparel.com. They're doing a bunch of cool drops right now. You don't have to use that on Georgia gear. I mean, I know that most of you are probably Georgia fans, but if you're watching this and you just really love the Minnesota Golden Gophers, then dude, go get you some Gophers gear at 20% off. Do your thing. Support them. Support us. We got some exciting stuff planned with them coming up later in the season. I'll go ahead and put it on the radar that Missouri weekend we'll be doing a live show Friday night before the game in Athens at the Foundry Hotel, and they'll have a pop-up shop and free alcohol and all sorts of fun people around, hopefully including you, Josh. So come and support them because they support us, and we cover a sport that's literally owned by the corporate media. And if you haven't been paying attention to conference realignment, so support the people that support independent media outlets like our own. All right.
Nice. All right, DC Central. That's the Dog Central code, and it's $4 off. There it is. So.
For the preview magazine. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
There it is. I did it while you were talking and paying bills. So shout out. Thank you guys, Dog Central, and thank you, Graham.
Thank you. All right. I know you guys are ready for us to talk SEC. Josh, let's talk SEC. Here we are. We're rolling into the season. We're not far off. Do you have any? We kind of talked SEC West here with our friends from A Rich Tradition last week. What are your vibes on the East? I mean, obviously the Georgia's the 800-pound gorilla. Anyone challenging?
I don't know. Yes, I think Tennessee can certainly challenge Georgia. Definitely, the East is going to run through Athens again, as it has for just about every year under Kirby Smart, save his first year. I think we're going to see my bold prediction is we're going to kind of see the Big Six almost return to. We're going to see in the East. We're going to see Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida. I think is the top third of the East, and again with Alabama, LSU, and A&M over there. It's kind of like the name brands of the SEC, I think, are going to be the ones that are going to be competing. I'm not big on Kentucky. I mean, they're going to be good. I'm kind of down on South Carolina, and I think Missouri.
Okay.
So that's my little overview of the East.
I like it. I like it a lot. I guess my question for you is Florida here, win total 5.5. You just said that you thought they were going to be kind of back up in the top half of the division, which is, I think, a little contrarian to where Vegas has them, to where a lot of the national pundits have them. What do you like about the Gators?
I just think that they cannot be that bad on offense again. And I think that they've got enough players there. And I think another year in the system, I think Graham Mertz maybe not sort of the athletic quarterback that they've had in there, but I think he can increase proficiency and efficiency in the offense. And I suspect that they can outclass some of the rosters at the South Carolina, Missouri, and Vanderbilt, and Tennessee's got to go to Gainesville, right? They got to go there, and that's not a place that they go in and get a lot of wins.
It's been a bugaboo for them for a long time. Yeah,
I think the season opener, sets up nicely for Florida. I mean, I know it's a big deal to go and play at altitude, but I just don't believe Cam Rising is going to be.
He's not playing.
He's not playing. Yeah. So there you go. I knew that was trending that way, and I was doing some other stuff the last couple of days, so I didn't pay it. Yeah, so I kind of like him to get the upset win, and 7-5 would be a good year for them. I don't think they're going to be 9-3 or anything like that.
Okay.
But
so you're not crazy high on them.
Not crazy high. I think the bottom. Yeah, I think they're the best of the rest in the East.
Interesting. All right. Yeah. So, I mean, for me with Florida, I think what I struggle with is back in 2021. I remember when you and I did our Georgia-Florida preview together, and we kind of talked about like, this Anthony Richardson kid's not ready to be thrown into a game like this against a defense like this. And if Dan Mullen does it to him, it's going to end poorly. And Dan Mullen was trying to save his job and kind of like create some vibes. And they threw him out there and it didn't go well. And I think that kind of broke him for a little while, and last year you saw some of the carryover effect. Like that Kentucky loss that they had was pretty brutal, for AR, but as the season went on, he was a 56% passer and, he was not like very accurate, but there's also a reason why he was picked where he was in the NFL draft. Like there was a certain brilliance that would come shine through athletically at times, especially on the ground.
Yeah. The Utah game alone,
Yeah, like that game or the run that he had against LSU in that loss where he like Superman dove into the end zone after breaking 5 freaking tackles in the open field. Like he gave them an explosiveness that I don't see anywhere this year. Like, I mean, going into maybe the Georgia game or, maybe not quite that deep in the season, but there was a point in the year last year where they were number 1 in the nation in rush explosiveness for a long time. And like, I think they still have really good running backs. I don't see Graham Mertz as like a weapon on the ground. I mean, maybe he can pick up a 3rd and 4 if the pocket breaks down, and there's someone on defense not playing their assignment right. Like I think he's got some mobility, but he's not running for 70-yard touchdowns. My question with Florida is on the offensive line, because I think quietly they actually maybe had the best OL in the conference last year behind Georgia. I don't think that's a crazy statement. But you lose a couple all SEC players. You have what's his name that transferred out to USC that had been a Georgia. He had been a Georgia commit at one time, and when Pittman left, he went to Florida. I forget, but like they lost a lot, and they're going to start Damian George tomorrow night, the former Alabama tackle who was part of their debacle against Auburn a couple years ago when Bryce Young got sacked 8 times. I don't know how that works. That's my big question mark for them, and that's my question mark for their game against Utah tomorrow night. Like if they can run the ball well enough to let Graham Mertz be like a guy who runs play action bootlegs and throws 18 times a game, I think they can be pretty successful and at least like not hurt themselves on offense and stay in some games. But I don't know if that happens. That's going to be the thing that I'm watching on Thursday night is what does that offensive line look like? Because I don't think Utah's got an SEC, like, a top third of the SEC, top quarter of the SEC style defensive line, but I think they have a pretty nice defensive line with some good players on it that can at least like maybe indicate a little bit what's going to happen for Florida's OL the rest of the year.
Yeah, I mean, Florida's bringing back two not, I don't want to say maybe stud running backs, 1,500 yards, 16 touchdowns, and Johnson and Etienne. Graham Mertz, I think, is a cable quarterback. I mean, I think he's going to have a better year than he's had the last 2. I just think he's got more weapons around him and possibly a better offense. Ricky Pearsall's a name that most fans know, but he's an 80 PFF guy, so they've got some weapons there. It's like you said, if that offensive line can hold up, they could. And I kind of like them to be a little better than Vegas had them, and I think they're trending in the right direction, and sort of everything's kind of like coming sort of their way. So yeah, it's always the SEC is the trenches, so we got to see what they can deliver on that O line. They do have a couple guys coming back that were 70 PFF guys that got 1,300 snaps, so they've got some pieces there, but they've got to fill in around it. And I guess the center is always a question. They didn't have a really good center play from judging by the grades that I see here.
Yeah, I think that's going to – and, I mean, you brought up Pearsall, who I think is a good player, and, he brings speed, and speed stresses defenses. My question is who's getting open after him? Like Zipper, I think is a maybe a little bit better tight end than his 58.7 player grade from PFF would indicate, but he's more of a big lumbering guy that he's not beating anybody down the seam with speed unless they've got a really good matchup situation. Let's talk about the defense a little bit, because last year the bugaboo. What's that?
They were terrible.
Yeah, and they were super thin up front. That was like, that Utah game in week 1, those guys were exhausted laying on the field after they intercepted Cam Rising in the end zone at the end of the game because they had played 80 snaps apiece as D linemen. The massive 430-something pounder Desmond Watson is back on the interior. Not much else besides him, although I did see they released their depth chart yesterday, and they listed him as kind of the number 2 D tackle there. That's the other issue, is what do they have on the defensive front?
Yeah, I mean, Justice Boone coming off the edge, decent year last year. You expect his snaps to get up over 300 this year. So they're going to depend on him, and hopefully, not hopefully, I'm not really hoping for anything good for Florida if I'm being real, but I'm sorry. I'm not a real journalist here. I'm a dog. But no, that's a name that, they were terrible on defense. I expect them to be better. I don't know where. I'm not going to try to predict where it's coming from, but I think they're going to regress to a better position. I think the offense, was okay last year, but I think they're going to improve on both sides of the ball enough to. They don't have to improve much to get to that 7-5 team, to be real. Just looking at the numbers and stuff. So I do, and the secondary is got a lot of question marks too, but they've got a lot of bodies there. They've got a lot of experience there. So those guys I think they're going to shore up a little bit, and secondary play can help the pass rush, of course.
Oh yeah, coverage sacks are a real thing for sure. I think you look at their depth chart, like there has been there's been a decent influx of talent from a recruiting standpoint. Like you got Tyreek Sapp up here, he's a redshirt sophomore. There's Cam Jackson at 6'6", 360, who is going to start instead of Watson, it looks like. And then Princely Uman, I can't pronounce his last name, but y'all know who I'm talking about. He's kind of a Jack style linebacker that's 6'4.5", 255, like former 4-star recruit. He's a junior now. He should be ready to play. You got Shamar James at linebacker, who was a recruit that everybody wanted and got snaps last year. Like there's some guys. I think the concern is, why didn't they play last year when that front seven was so thin? Like if those guys could play, they would have played them last year to rotate better and to keep guys fresh. So it makes me honestly feel like they've either had some excellent player development this offseason, or this defense, could struggle tomorrow night against Utah. And, I guess it's going to be a ground and pound versus ground and pound type game. Do you have any, like you said that you like them to beat Utah tomorrow, correct?
Yeah, I kind of do. I think just all things are trending that way. And Utah, everyone's remembering the end of Utah's season, but I think roster lineup for roster. I mean, the SEC is better, and I think they kind of proved that. I mean, Utah had everything going for them last year, and Florida got the upset win at home. It's tough to win on the road, but I kind of like. I like Florida going in there. They've got the depth is a concern if they don't have some guys that they can rotate in and out, especially in the pass rush and linebacking could get gnarly there at the end. But I just kind of like them to get that win. I just think it's a better roster.
No, I think that's a pretty good perspective. I mean, the thing that I've monitored is that this line was up around 10 points at one point. Utah was favored by 9.5. It's down to 4.5. I mean, I think it should be either way, kind of around, under one possession. But, with Cam Rising out, that swung the line considerably. I had the misfortune last year of betting on Utah in, I think, a Thursday night game when they were maybe on the road at Washington State. And, bet on them. I think they were like about a 14-point favorite. Felt great about it. And then they pull Cam Rising from the lineup in warmups unexpectedly. And they, of course, don't cover. They win by 10 instead of 14. Kind of, some bullshit happened. Point being, I have been bit by riding the Utes without Rising before. And they also have a history of losing early season games under Whittingham. That's kind of been his Achilles heel as a coach, is like they often start 2-2 and then they roll off, 7-1 down the stretch and they're 9-3 and they win the Pac-12 or whatever. But this has been their bugaboo. So I think at this point, if I had to make a pick on that game, I would say bet the under. At 44.5. I know that's a low number, but I don't think either of these teams are doing anything. But the more that I look at this Florida depth chart and roster, I am going to admit that I'm starting to see this scenario where I think Utah just comes out and they are able to kind of ground and pound Florida and they just sort of control the game that way. And they don't blow them out by any means, but they kind of keep them at arm's length and are up by 7 to 10 points for a lot. I think the first quarter of this game is going to be extremely important. Whoever scores first in this game, especially whoever scores the first touchdown, is maybe going to determine it, because I think game state for both these teams is really important. Neither of them needs to be behind and trying to throw the ball and play catch up.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. A 9-play drive, 9 or 10 play drive there by Utah at the beginning of the first quarter there could be tough uphill battle even if it's just a field goal or something like that. I can see that factoring in, especially in that fourth quarter where this game might be decided.
I agree. All right, let's move on to our Georgia Bulldogs here. Over under 11.5. When you made the guide, this was priced at 120. It's still right there at 115, plus 115 on the over, minus 135 on the under. I mean, straight up, Georgia over under 11.5. Where are you? Are they losing a football game?
I'm a friggin' dog stats. Give me the over.
Take it. Pound the table.
Yeah, I mean, it's as much as the hype around Tennessee, and that looks to be the game of the year, and if not in the SEC, certainly in the SEC East, it's a long ways off. A lot of football is going to happen between now and then, so I'm not going to put too much about thinking that far ahead, because I think, like I said, I think Florida's going to be better than we expected. I think Auburn's going to be better than where we were preseason. So I think I'll save that for my bold prediction that you want from the when we do the bold predictions. So yeah, they're the best team in the country. I'll take the over, plus money, sure. Drop a quarter on there for me. By a quarter, I mean 25 cents, Graham.
I got you.
In a legal state of.
I'll bake it in.
I mean, from a betting standpoint, I mean, I think I know, yes, take the over, but I mean, there's better places to put your money for 3 months. Having them make the playoff, have them win the SEC. You get a little better odds on there. So, and both the playoff, both national championship and SEC gives you a slip up game too, whereas this over doesn't.
Yeah, man, I think if you look at this, if you go down the schedule week by week, it's hard, like independently. I don't see anybody that I look at and think, Georgia shouldn't be favored by at least, 10 to 14 points, right? Like, curious to see what Ole Miss is. They got a lot of big question marks on their offense, and even more on their defense. Tennessee, we'll get to them here in a moment, but like, I don't have as much confidence in Joe Milton as a lot of people. I'll just tell you guys now, like I'm betting on the Tennessee UVA under this weekend because a lot of people got addicted to Tennessee overs last year. And I don't know, if Virginia can keep that game close at all or score any of their own points, but I don't think that offense is going to operate with quite the same efficiency as it did under Hendon Hooker. And my policy is going to be kind of to bet against Joe Milton until he makes me pay for it. I think obviously we've seen the big arm and all that, but it's just like, we haven't seen him, I mean, he played a nice game against Clemson, but they also were kind of held in check for most of that football game. So point being, I feel like Tennessee's still got some unknowns. They probably will be worse on offense and better on defense. It's hard to not think that. But about Georgia, we got some questions from our Dog Central subscribers, and I think they are kind of a good way to answer, or I should say they're a good way to preview this team a little bit. So season-long themes that develop for UGA. And this is kind of, an ambiguous one, but I guess for me, my big answer, or the big thing that I'm monitoring in September is, how does Georgia manage on the interior line? We've heard Kirby say in press conferences that he has some concern about the defensive line depth. You've now cycled Jalen Carter out of your program. He was the best player on the football team for at least 2 years. I think that if Georgia can come out and they can two-gap the way that they did last year, where they were able to, play a team like Tennessee with only 5 or 6 men in the box and control the run while still committing as many players as they wanted to commit to the secondary, then they probably beat Tennessee again, right? Like that's the number one rule of Georgia defense under Kirby Smart is nobody runs on us. I think you feel good, looking at this kind of roster that you've assembled here. Like, you feel good about Nazir Stackhouse. You feel great about Mykel Williams. I think Warren Brinson's a nice player, but we've never seen him play more than, 15 or so snaps in a significant game. Like, can he come and play 30 or 40? What's the story on Ingram Dawkins? He's still a little banged up from camp. Like, that's my Kristen Miller. We got a question about him. Like, can he sort of take the jump? And I think all these guys, from what I've heard in fall camp, they flash at times and they look really good. And then they have days that are, they kind of come back to earth. And it's like, who's going to develop that consistency that we saw from Stackhouse last year? Zion Logue's a veteran that they trust. I don't know that he has the same ceiling as some of these other guys from just kind of an explosive havoc-making standpoint. But that's my big question.
We've been blessed with some guys that returned. I don't know, it's been unexpectedly, with Jordan Davis returning in 2021 and Jalen Carter. I'm not sure if he could have gone last year, but and Christopher Smith is one of these guys, a veteran that's was there for, so we don't really have that guy that could have gone last year that stuck around that we're hanging our hat on as our veteran leaders. So I think all of those questions to me seem like we're just still looking for that guy to emerge. And of course, there's plenty of dudes that can emerge for Georgia. I'm excited about the secondary. I mean, we saw some young guys play last year. And I think, we're going to see I don't know about dramatic. I mean, it's like we've been so elite on defense. It's hard to expect a dramatic improvement on defense, but I do expect some more explosive, more havoc, and some more passes batted down, pass breakups on the secondary, which, we all kind of were wringing our hands there late in the season, and some of the secondary lapses, uncoverage lapses and stuff. So I love Mykel Williams. I mean, he had a great national championship game, and I think he's a guy that maybe can just, I expect to it's going to be just everyone's going to be contributing, and we don't have anybody to hang our hat on. So I expect to be a little better than we were on defense, somewhere between 21 and 22. It's still going to be an elite defense. It's going to be sub 4.7 yards per play and a sub 40 defensive success rate allowed, which is going to put you in a national title hunt, defensively. So I'm not worried. I don't lay in bed awake thinking about the Georgia defense.
Nor should you. I think like Kirby Smart, the proof is in the pudding, right? Like I've kind of started becoming somewhat professionally friendly with Dave Bartu, who runs Matrix Analytical, which is like a service for athletic directors that tracks, coaching hires and stuff like that. But I was talking to him at one point this offseason, and he mentioned to me that like he does all this opponent adjustment tracking of units and all of that, and it's very complicated, and I don't know what his secret sauce looks like exactly, but I'm pretty sure he said something like 5 of the top 10 college football defenses of the last like 25 years, maybe 6 of them were Kirby Smart defenses. Like there's just a different level of defense that gets played on his teams, and I don't see any reason why that changes. Let's kind of move a little deeper into the defense with this question here, which is, in recent years, our edge players haven't put up great numbers in terms of sacks or tackles for loss. So what would a successful first game for our young guys at that position look like? And I guess, taking that a step further, the question is, I think, very accurate. Like, Georgia hasn't really asked for havoc from that position. They've really asked those guys to play the run and be responsible for the whole 2-gap philosophy that we were just talking about. Like, do you think, looking at this roster, some of the young talent, you got a veteran like Chambliss, do you think we see a little more like raw sack production or tackles for loss from that spot, or do you think it continues to be just sort of like a play it safe type philosophy?
Man, you're the X's and O's guy. I just think Mykel Williams is best going after it. You know what I mean? And I think, you just like on offense, you find what your players can do and give them the ball in space or let them stretch the defense. You put your players in a spot to produce. And I think maybe with the big Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter and the big interior, production we've had, maybe that's not as where our strength of our defense is here. So maybe we do pivot to more havoc and more pressure on the edges. So, does that sound like I know what I'm talking about? Because I would expect to maybe see Mykel have a big year off the edge.
Yeah, I think like it's hard to judge anything in this first game, honestly, at all, because Georgia's pressure packages last year, they were awesome, but like they didn't really get pressure with 4. Like, that Tennessee game, they dialed up that Javon Bullard blitz from the star position, or, they did a lot of blitzing with Dumas Johnson and Smile Mondon. Later in the year, they used Jalen Walker some. I think they will use Jalen Walker again this year, even though he is technically an inside linebacker. I expect to see him in some third down situations. But like you said with Mykel, against Ohio State, it's 3rd and 10, and all of a sudden, instead of lining up, inside the shoulder of the offensive tackle is like a 4 ID end like he did all year, he's way out wide like a traditional pass rusher, like a Von Miller or somebody in the NFL that's a pass rush specialist, and he blows a first-round draft pick off the ball and sacks CJ Stroud for a really big play. So they got it in them.
Yeah.
I am curious about sort of that jack linebacker position, the one that everyone calls edge now in all caps, across from Michael. Like Chaz Chambliss, I think is a nice player. I think he's a leader on the team, and I think he's a pretty good pass rusher if you just look at what he's done, especially late in the year last season after Nolan Smith was hurt. But I would like to see more out of him in the run game from a run defense standpoint. And I'm curious, like, first and foremost, if you're looking for sort of bellwether signs this weekend from those edge guys, it's are they stopping the run? Because if they're not stopping the run, then Kirby's not going to put them on the field. Like, we know that.
I think what, specifically what you might be looking for is maybe not who plays maybe who plays the most. I think you're going to know who your starters are, but maybe you see Chaz in there for 10 or 15 more plays than you might see Michael, or just maybe these guys are getting a chance to produce more. So specifically on Saturday, look for Chaz to see what he can see. He's going to maybe get a chance to like you say, play on the run defense, make some good plays on the run defense, and also maybe put some pressure on there. So I think Chaz is one guy that you want to be specifically looking at it on Saturday.
For sure. And then I'm really also excited to see like Marvin Jones Jr. and Damon Wilson, Samuel Mpimba. Like, those dudes are all former 5-stars. One of them has to kind of emerge, I would think, or, show some athletic superiority, but we shall see. Speaking of this weekend, any chance we see anything? Is the Bulldog in the building? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
You hear grunting on your speakers right now. It's Josh's Bulldog. Rest in peace to Sonny Seiler, by the way.
For real.
Any chance we see anything other than a very vanilla Georgia offense this weekend? One of our subscribers says, I have bought into the Kirby/Monken long con theory, but with no tape on Beck, do you think the UGA staff wants to be more open?
It was 2019, I guess. Everybody kept saying, when are we going to see the playbook? When are we going to see the playbook? When are we going to see the playbook? We never saw it. Well, we did see it, Yeah. So I'm not, and Kirby's always said we got the plays. I'm sure they've always going to have something in reserve. So I don't think we're going to see a reserve playbook at all. I think that, with a new play caller and new quarterback, you want to run through just even getting the plays on the field and, getting them to the right protections. And it's a, live game practice. I mean, live game situation that sure, they do that in practice too, but I think it's important to do it in the game. So I expect to see a pretty good sample of what to see on offense. Maybe not any wild formations, we're
going to see some I form.
Yeah. Sure. If I were Mike Bobo, I would line up 2 tight ends and a fullback just to make everybody lose their
first play of the game, dude. Absolutely. Come out. Bowers at fullback, Dylan Bell at running back.
Yeah, exactly. But and also I think, with the running back situation still kind of a little thin right now to start the year, you're probably going to see some passing, a little more passing. Maybe you're going to see more. Yeah, maybe more than we might see. I mean, hopefully everybody's healthy for the I almost said the United States game, the USC game.
No. Don't give them that much credit. I think with Georgia, I talk a lot about vanilla offense against some of these out of conference opponents and even against a lot of in-conference opponents. But just because it's vanilla doesn't mean it's not explosive, or it doesn't mean that they're not stretching the field. I think Beck is a much more natural, like, boundary deep ball thrower than Stetson ever was. I thought, Stetson was pretty accurate last year on deep shots, but like that wasn't his game, so to speak. So I would say that I think we get the big shots downfield at some point. We see some explosive plays. I think that Georgia wants to establish that they have a deep passing game, a vertical passing game. I think they want to put that on tape, but they also have the best offensive line in the country. And so how they do that is going to be the curious thing. Like, are they going to gash holes for, a quarter until the opponent's like, oh my God, we got to do something to stop this. And then when they creep up, do they go bombs away? But I think you're right. Just sort of with the injuries right now, tight end room being a little thinner with Lucky out at the moment. And the fact that you've got so much wide receiver talent and you have a new quarterback, I think that they want to like establish Carson Beck's confidence, even if that's against UT Martin. And so if Beck comes out and he's like 13 for 16 at halftime for, 220 and 2 or 3 touchdowns, maybe he sits the rest of the game. But if he's struggling a little bit or, he misses on some throws early, then he probably plays a little longer because they want him to be confident. What they don't want is any sort of semblance of a quarterback controversy in season. So I'm sure they'll kind of manage the game with those parameters in mind. But I think when you talk about Georgia's offense, I think the offense, there's not going to be any double reverse passes on Saturday, but like, I think what made Monken really good last year was that it was the formational kind of decoy stuff that he did where like they ran a lot of the same concepts, but in some of their bigger games, they ran them out of formations that they'd never run them before. So the defense, when they were on the field, they didn't catch those tendencies. They didn't expect, oh, here comes a wheel route to Brock Bowers, because they'd never seen that play run out of that formation. And I think we might just see kind of some base formational stuff on Saturday.
Yeah, I can remember watching, a game at Sanford and Kent State that we put up yards and points as our season totals would tell you, but it wasn't pretty. So, I think they want to be crisp, and I expect them to not be vanilla, just to reiterate that point. Yeah, I think they want to put some good plays on tape for themselves and not worry about what everybody else is. Everybody's got tape on Georgia. They're not going to hide anything. Yeah. So I expect a fairly normal game plan, outside of coming out in the I formation jumbo package on 1st and 10 at the 20.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. 3 bold predictions for Georgia this season.
3 bold predictions. Georgia's schedule will not be a detriment. I think Auburn, Kentucky, I'm a little down on Kentucky, but Auburn and Florida are certainly going to be better than people and expect them. So I think that at the end of the year that the schedule is going to be fine. Mm-hmm. I think that Carson Beck is going to be, I don't know how bold this is, but I think Carson Beck's the quarterback for all 13 games. I'm going to say, 13, because I'm going to count the SEC championship game, or maybe 15 games. But I think Carson Beck is solidified, and he's going to leave little to no doubt on that he's QB1. And my biggest bold prediction is that Brock Bowers goes to New York.
Wow. I like it. So one of my bold predictions was going to be that Georgia finally gets their 1,000-yard receiver, but it's a tight end. It's Brock Bowers. So, I could see it. Like, I think if they go 12-0 again, then somebody's going to New York.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that I'm going to say, my sort of bold prediction is that I don't know how bold it is, but I think Georgia's offensive line is the best that we've seen in program history. I think it's going to be a straight up maul fest, and those guys are going to play extremely well for a long time. And I think in years past, we've seen Georgia. So that's one. Number 2, in years past, we've sort of seen Georgia establish the run to establish the pass. I think we see that kind of in reverse more this year. Like I think that they sort of open up the pass to open up the run at times. My third bold prediction is going to be I don't know if this is fair or not, but my third bold prediction is that nobody's going to be talking about Mike Bobo come November. Like in the sense of nobody's going to be complaining about him. Like I think that he is going to have a very good season. I think that the pieces he has are totally different than anything he's ever had. And I think he's going to do a good job. I think he's going to, not make people forget Monken because he's a program legend, right? Like he called the offense for back-to-back national championships. But I don't think that Georgia's going to lose much in the offensive coordinator realm. I think that Mike Bobo is going to do a really, really good job.
Yeah, I mean, I've been asked a couple times on a couple different little shows and spaces I've done, but Mike Bobo is probably the number one question that you're getting out there, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, he's the definition of a professional coach. He's been coaching for a very long time under different scenarios, different programs, different quality of team and roster, and this is the best roster he's had. And certainly he's going to play under. He's never had anything close to this defensively to be. So I think he's just going to be a pig in shit and happy. So I expect him to ball out. I mean, he put up. I think. Am I wrong? Am I remembering this wrong? That our best year scoring was under Bobo, right? Like
correct. 2014.
All these great years we've had under Monken, and still the score
number one in yards of play.
Yeah. So, I pulled up a stat. He was top half or top 4 or 5 in the SEC in yards per play, most of the years he was calling plays. So, and I think he's adapted well. And, I couldn't agree more. To hear you say that, I don't even think that's bold, but it is bold from you're outside of
from a narrative standpoint, it's bold.
Yeah, for sure. No, I totally agree.
But I think the thing that I would point out is that in all this, neither of us really said anything about Carson Peck, and I think that's because, I'll say it here because I've said it a lot on the Dog Central website, and I don't know that it's a big secret that I'm giving away, but that dude has had a phenomenal fall camp, and the question on him had always been okay, he has these good days where he looks like a future first-round pick, but then he's inconsistent the next two, and he makes bad decisions. And at one point, a couple weeks ago, someone told me hey, we're kind of hoping he has a bad day just so we can see how he bounces back from it. And, the secondary that they're playing against is no joke in practice. They face the best defense that they're going to face probably all year, every day in practice, or at least that they're going to face until, the postseason. So I think he's played well. I think he's played within himself, most importantly, throughout camp. And I think that, he's ready to come for kind of what's his. And I think that, he's kind of openly admitted that he wasn't ready for this in 2021. And that's a good thing because it means he's very different than he was then, and that's kind of what's fun about college football, man, is these guys grow and they change and they evolve, and they're in a very formative period of their life. And the player that he was this time last year or this time 2 years ago is not the player he is now. And I think he's gonna have a pretty special season.
I couldn't agree more. Can I piggyback on and add one little
Please.
When Carson Beck is the first quarterback selected in the draft from the SEC.
I think that I like it. Yeah, I'm in there with you.
He's like our Mac Jones, man.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a very good comp.
Not as fat.
No, he's not. He's not as fat, and he's taller. All right, let's scroll down here to Tennessee because I think we both agree that on paper and in perception they're kind of the biggest threat to Georgia in the division. What do you think about the Vols this year?
I'm guilty of this don't sleep on the defense. That's a quality defense.
Okay.
I just think that if they everyone's talking about the quarterback, which is clearly he's runs through him. They've got to replace a lot on offense. It feels like that maybe that we need to just not assume that they can just roll out of bed and run 90 plays a game at a high efficiency rate. That I think they will by the end of the season. By the time we get them, we're going to know exactly what they are. But I expect them to have maybe a little questionable games. But I think they're gonna. I don't know, man. I'm not going to say that Tennessee Florida game just yet, but that's going to be a good game. I think that's going to be a really good game. I wouldn't be surprised if Milton is on a short leash too. They got the five-star kid behind him.
I am Alieva.
Yeah. See, I say the 5-star kid because I can't pronounce.
Just call him Nico. You can just
Nico. There you go, Nico. So they got a bunch of good running backs. They got to find some new guys to catch the ball. Brew McCoy, this is his year, and for him to have a good year, we got to see some improved accuracy from Joe Milton.
Mm-hmm.
So, that, I know that they printed the books and the coffee table books for that win last year, but they got to go to Tuscaloosa.
It's going to be a tough one.
You talked about the points per. There's a Rotary Club is here doing a little total points scored thing, and everybody. I just assumed everybody was going to take Tennessee, but only a few people took Tennessee. But you look at that schedule; they had to score a lot of points in some of those games, and I don't think they can. I don't think they can score 50 in Tuscaloosa. So
Again,
yeah. There's no way they're scoring 50. So I expect that offense to come back down to earth a little bit, and I think that makes them. Possibly gives them a couple games that are going to be close-up, toss-up kind of games. And, I don't know. They're definitely the second best team. But that's a tough place to play. I think they're going to have – look at their schedule. They're going to have – certainly I'm going to get –
they've got I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to they're not going to have more than 2 losses coming in that game. I think they're going to split
into the Georgia game?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they could potentially be just a 1-loss team, and that whether it's Florida or Alabama, I think they're the only 2 teams that are capable of beating them.
Interesting.
Where's that Texas A&M game? Yeah, they got A&M.
That's the one that I've kind of got highlighted in my mind as a potential loss. They do get them at home though, which I think is big.
Yeah, I just think if Milton's a guy, and they're all in on Milton, and which they'll know that by the time they come out of Florida, but come out of Gainesville, I would expect, then I think they handle A&M. But if there's still question marks, if they're looking at Nico, or if they either barely get by with a win at Florida and do it ugly or whatever, it could be. But if they've got it sorted out, I think they can beat Texas A&M.
So my thoughts on Tennessee, I think we're both on the same page. Like the offense kind of has to come back down to earth in some way, shape, or form. I'm not saying it crashes down, but it statistically, I think it levels off a little bit. But I do think the defense is not giving up 63 to South Carolina again. I think the defense gets better. I don't think you can play super, super high level defense on the other side of that offense. Like it's especially with the pace. I think I guess what I'm saying is when I say they're going to be a good defense or a better defense, that I filter it through the offense that they play across from and realize that, really what they're being asked to do is hold serve 2 to 3 times a half if they can. And maybe less this year with these new clock rules. I'm interested to see, I think that's a disadvantage for Tennessee more than maybe anybody in terms of, I don't think they can hit the 90 to 100 play mark as frequently with these new rules because the clock's going to run on first downs.
Yeah, and exactly. Even if I think they're obviously used to that pace. They cannot play any faster, right?
No.
So there's no way. They will come back, and then the other teams are probably going to use that against them. It's definitely going to. I couldn't agree with you more. It's definitely going to impact them a whole bunch.
With the wide receivers, I think you lose Jalen Hyatt. You lose Cedric Tillman. Those guys were both really good players, but Brew McCoy, I think, is another go route runner, and Dante Thornton, the Oregon transfer. I remember you and I talking about him, this time a year ago. Again, he's a guy that can run fast in a straight line and go deep, and that's really what they ask of their outside receivers. They want them to do that, and they want them to run slants. Squirrel White, I think, is probably the best receiver on the roster just in terms of like running a complete route tree. I think he's more twitchy than either of those guys. And Keaton's a good receiver too. I mean, like that kid had 568 yards receiving last year. So I'm curious to see who becomes kind of the alpha dog, like the go-to. And I have questions about their offensive line. And I think Milton, super, super athletic, right? Like, we know that he's mobile, but I think he's more of a straight line runner, whereas Hooker had a little more agility to his style. I think with Milton, I think he's going to have some boom and bust kind of games. I think that there's going to be games where he's floating those crazy deep shots way downfield, and it's beautiful and it's gorgeous. And I think there's going to be times where he misses, 3 or 4 open shots and a half. And it's just going to be a little bit of a question of like that week to week variance. And that's why I find their season kind of hard to predict right now. I think that the rest of the league is going to get better at defending this offense. The big key, I think that Georgia realized was like, you don't let the quarterback get open lanes up the middle to run in. And you can't give away inside leverage to their receivers to run these short slants. And everyone focuses on the deep balls, and I get why, but what makes it go is, those little short kind of inside patterns. And I'm very interested to see like how Florida plays them, or, South Carolina kind of had the formula last year where it's like the teams that can beat them are the teams that can match up and play man on the outside. And then they've got good enough like safeties and slot defenders to take that inside leverage away. And I think that there's going to be some people that do that to them. I don't think they replicate last year's success. I think that they're, a 9-3 or 8-4 team probably. But I will say there is a universe if Joe Milton just really hits that they could be really good.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about, let me just see here, against Power 5 competition last year, they were a 23% explosive play rate, which is middle of the pack. Mm-hmm. So it's a volume game. Ohio State, was at 30%. Last year, Auburn was at 26, Georgia was at 25%. So if you're talking about a volume of plays, and they're kind of like, they need those volume of plays to break a couple of those because they are explosive, but they need a lot of them. So I think, like, to reiterate your point about it, it's like, yeah, they might feel that a little bit. And then Hooker was much more of a veteran. I mean, Milton's been around forever, but he's not.
He hasn't played as much football though.
Hasn't as much football. So I expect more than just a tiny bit more than a little bit of regression, and making those games that they won easily last year much more competitive, and some of the competition they've got. That Arkansas certainly. I mean, that A&M game is certainly the sort of the game that's gonna. I don't know if it's gonna define their season, but it's gonna tell us who they are.
It's a swing game for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I'll kind of use this as a segue here, but right before that, they get South Carolina at home. That was where the wheels kind of fell off last year. I mean, look, if they'd beaten South Carolina, they would have been a playoff team. That's the reality, right? And then they went on the road to a team that had just lost by, I think, like 30 to Florida, and they got 63 put on their asses. Like, what?
I think they just scored another touchdown.
Yeah, I think. Oh, what? Oh, we're just getting word in our ear. Jaheim Bell just scored again on the Tennessee defense. Oh my God, they can't stop scoring. What do you think of South Carolina this year? Because like
They're going to be the biggest letdown of the East.
They are a 2.5 point dog to UNC this weekend, and I'm having a hard time squaring that with like the 8 months of South Carolina hype that's been.
Well, okay, here's one to watch, whether they win or lose. Watch the North Carolina D-line versus South Carolina O-line. Those are both terrible units, if I'm not mistaken.
I agree.
So if South Carolina doesn't hold up against that defense, it's going to be a tough year for Beamer. It's going to be a tough year. They're on the way up, but this season is not going to be a great year. I mean, that O-line is super. That's probably the worst. Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the Vandy O-line. I guess they didn't look super great, but I don't know.
Vandy's it's not really a real team. I mean, sorry, right, Vandy, but
but I'm saying, what I was going to say is like South Carolina would take every other O-line and maybe even Vanderbilt's O-line,
maybe even a player or two. Yeah, for sure. Well, to your point, I mean, this offensive line, looking at the guide right here that you put together, there's not a single blue chipper on the O-line. Everyone is a 3-star, and no one's got a PFF player grade higher than 60.9. And the thing that's scary, I think, is the guys that played the most snaps last year are the ones that have the lowest grades. So Spencer Rattler is going to be running a lot.
And his decision-making is questionable at best.
That's what I was about to say, is him under pressure equals, I think, him trying to do too much with pure arm talent.
Yep.
I mean, and I think like the running backs, Juju McDowell, De'Carrion Joyner, I think they're nice players. I don't know that they're like big time difference makers.
I was checking this real fast, and that if you're looking at the guide, that Jalen Nichols kid's out for the year, I believe, or I don't know if they've said he's out for the year, but he had a nasty injury in the spring game. So
that's right.
And that was at 600 snaps. So you've taken almost over, somewhere between a third and a quarter of the snaps of experience and put it on the shelf for the majority of the season, if not the entire season.
Yeah, and I mean, on the other side of the ball, like, I actually think they have a pretty decent, secondary. I think the back secondary is like, we saw them have some really good games, I guess, like at the end of the season. What they did to Tennessee, I know that Tennessee ended up scoring points, but like they manned up and they won that game. Cam Smith has gone to the NFL, who was a star in that game, frankly, but like DQ Smith and Eamon Worry, I think, is a really nice safety tandem. O'Donnell Fortune, he's the 1+70 PFF grade guy back there. But like, I think Eamon Worry and DQ Smith were both really young players last year. I expect them to take a step forward. But my concern is, how long are they going to have to cover? Because I look at their defensive front, and for the narrative with South Carolina that Shane Beamer's come in, he's breathed all these good vibes into the program, and they're recruiting really well. So it's like, I think that narrative is believable. But the thing that I struggle with, and that stands in contrast to that idea, is just, man, the amount of significant players that transferred out of this team after the way that season ended is a little scary. Like, you lost, on offense, you lost both your tight ends. You lost Stogner, who had transferred there from Oklahoma. He goes back to Oklahoma. You lost, Jaheim Bell, who also played a lot of running back for them. Probably the best pure athlete on the team, if not maybe in the entire conference last year. He's gone. You lose Jordan Birch, who was the only 5-star on their defensive front. Like, Tonka Hemingway, nice interior lineman. Is he going to have to play 70 snaps a week? Because I don't know how effective anybody is at that point, right? Like, where does the pressure come from? Where does the run stop come from?
Yeah, I mean, and don't forget Marshawn Lloyd went to Southern Cal.
Yeah.
And one of the best running backs in the SEC. But you can't. Anton Wells, Juice Wells is, or Juju Wells, is it Juice or Juju?
I think it's Juice Wells.
Juice Wells is a stud. He's gonna get a lot of targets.
Yeah.
So I mean, I was just looking at the All SEC media that you probably voted on, and the Tongaway kid's the only defensive player that's on first or on any of the teams, and Wells is the only one on the offense. So yeah, it's a pretty thin roster, and it's thin in production, thin in a little bit of thin in talent. So I just looking for a massive regression for South Carolina. I mean, and that their season was saved by that Tennessee win by some
and Clemson.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's who they were for. I think a lot of people are ignoring who they were for 10 weeks, and they played Notre Dame in kind of a fun barn burner game the night before Georgia, Ohio State. I remember watching it in Atlanta in the hotel, and like that game was back and forth, and it was really wild. But like they were, I think they had 3 interceptions against Tyler Buckner, and one of them was like 100 and something yard pick six, and they still lost. Their win total is 6.5. It's even money. It's a bet the over on it. I go up and down this schedule. I think they lose in North Carolina on Saturday. I think Vegas is telling you that. I think that 2.5 point line kind of goes against everything that like we've gotten narrative wise this offseason. I want to shout out Buck Metrics, who is a USC he's kind of the dog stats of USC, but he put up something. I had shared our friend Chris Marler. He had said something earlier today about how like just, on paper, it feels like South Carolina's set up well for this game, but UNC lost Longo as an OC, and Buck Metrics sent me this thing. He said, no defense for a team with Longo as OC has had a positive Buck Metrics defensive rating ever. Prior to arriving at Ole Miss, prior to Longo coming to Ole Miss, their defensive power rating was -0.2. With him as OC, their defense had power ratings of -5.7 and -5.0. The season after Longo left, Ole Miss power ratings improved to -0.6. For the 4 seasons he was the OC at UNC, the defensive power ratings were -0.8, -0.9, -0.8, and then -6.4 last year. And it said, and should be noted that the first 3 of those seasons when the defense was merely poor, the DC was Jay Bateman, who was very well thought of after doing a great job at Army. I guess my thing is like, I don't know. I don't think UNC's really like built super well on the line of scrimmage, but like you just said, South Carolina's not either. So I'm giving the 8. Like, I think that becomes kind of a little bit of like a skill player shootout type game. And I'm going to give the edge to Sam Howell over Spencer Rattler every single time in that scenario. Aren't you?
Drake May.
I'm sorry. That's right. Yeah.
Okay. I'll give it over.
Quarterback.
I give it Sam Howell too. But no, I mean, I'm down on USC this year for all those reasons. They're it's a little bit of a patchwork on offense, and defense is returning a lot, but it's not returning a lot of quality, I guess. So yeah, I haven't looked at that game. I probably would take UNC in that. You said it's less than a field goal.
Yeah, -2.5. UNC's favored.
And so they're saying that UNC would win that. It would be, I guess, close to a pick'em game at US. Yeah, it's
a neutral game. It's in Charlotte.
But I'm saying, yeah, if that game were in Columbia, it'd be a pick'em on the road for Carolina. So yeah,
basically,
yeah. So just kind of down on the. I do think that overall, big picture wise, the program is in good hands. It's fun to take shots at Beamer, but I think he's brought in and recruiting at a improved level. But this year I think it's going to be a step back.
Yeah, I think they lose to UNC. I think they come out of September 1 and 3. I think they lose to UNC, Georgia, and Mississippi State, and then they go lose to Tennessee.
Oof.
I think I think it's going to be rough, dude. And then Florida, I don't know what Florida's going to be yet, but I could see them losing that game too because they don't have a very good defensive line, and we know Florida's going to pound the rock. So then you're talking about going to Missouri, and you're at 1-5 possibly. Like I could see them starting the year like 2-6, and I could see them being like a 3-4 win team when it's all said and done. Sorry, Gamecocks. Speaking of Missouri, that's kind of my sleeper for the conference. I don't want to spend a ton of time on Missouri, but I if they get like just average quarterback play, man, I think they're going to have a pretty damn good season. We saw what that offensive line could do last year against Georgia. They pushed Georgia's front around for a long time in that game, let's be honest. And then Theo Weiss, Luther Burden is a really nice receiver tandem. I like Pete and Schrader at running back. Like, I think they've got nice pieces on offense, but what I really love is their defense. I think they've probably got the best back seven, maybe outside of Athens in the division. Like Hopper and Bailey are two linebackers that will slap you on the run, and they are badass in coverage, and they are lengthy, and they ran with Brock Bowers all night in that game. You know what I'm saying? Like those guys could cover. Rakestraw and Abrams Drain is a stud corner duo. I don't know a ton about the safeties, but I see that one of them is a yellow in here, which is a good thing. Like I think that their defense is going to be very, very good, and I think they're going to surprise some people. And my prediction is that if you look at their schedule, they get Kansas State at home week 3. I think that's kind of a bellwether game. I think that, I'm interested to see how that one goes, but I think they're going to start the year either 4-1 or 5-0, depending on how that Kansas State game goes. I think they beat South Dakota, Middle Tennessee, Memphis, and Vandy. And then LSU comes to town, and I think that could be a tricky spot, Tigers versus Tigers. Aesthetically, it might be the most nice Jersey game of the year. And then they go to Kentucky. Like, what do you think about Kentucky, man?
I think they're going to be a good team. I think they're the separator. I've got them over Missouri.
Okay.
Just by a little bit.
That's totally fair. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just by a little bit. I think obviously it's Georgia, Tennessee, and then Florida, Missouri, Kentucky. I'm kind of putting, you kind of have to throw out like all of them,
They got Liam Cohen back at offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
They got Devin Leary, who's a really good quarterback. I hope he stays healthy all year because
that LSU game, if you're saying if they're going to start off really like
I'm talking about Missouri.
No, but I'm saying that I'm just looking at that LSU game. If they start out that hot, that's going to be a night game.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, right?
And then they got to go to Kentucky. I think Kentucky's going to be ready for them. I'm going to take Kentucky at home, which just kind of puts them at that 4-4 in the SEC, and Missouri at 3-5. So
okay.
So that's where I've got them.
Yeah, I mean, I think the good thing for Missouri, and it's not because I don't love Sam Pittman. I do, but I think that Arkansas, people were really mad about this, but I picked them last in the West on my preseason SEC ballot, and it's tough, dude. Like you look at
somebody's got to finish last,
right? It's like I had to pick between them, Auburn, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State. One of those 4 teams had to finish last. I had LSU, Alabama, and A&M as my top 3 in the division. So
I mean, do you have them like a 1-7 last, or a 0-8 last, or like a
a 2 and I think the SEC West is going to be like a bunch of 4-4 teams, and Arkansas is going to be the 2-6 or 3-5 in the conference. I mean, their schedule is just nightmarish, man.
Yeah.
They've got, that's Alabama. Sorry. Like they started with Western Carolina and Kent State, but like I think they could lose to BYU in week 3. I don't think it's a guarantee they win that game, and then they go to LSU, Texas A&M, to Ole Miss, to Alabama, Mississippi State at home, who I think is undervalued at 6.5 wins. Honestly, they got to cross over against. They got to go to Florida as one of their crossover games. I would give Florida an edge in that game.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's. I think I've got. See, I'm down on Ole Miss, so I think that Arkansas or Ole Miss game. I think, yeah, I can see them 2-6, 3-5. You know, they're not going to get over 4 wins for sure. So I think a 3-5 year would be a pretty good hold serve for that program. It's going to be disappointing, I know, with KJ Jefferson, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Coming back and not to put some wins on there, but that is a brutal schedule.
I agree, man. So yeah, with Missouri down here, Missouri, I think they have a nice year, man. And I mean, like you talk about another program that's got some vibes right now from a recruiting standpoint. It's them. They just got a commitment from Williams Nwaneri. Some people think he is the number 1 overall player in this class. He is currently a unanimous top 4 or 5 player. I think he's the number 1 D lineman in the class. Kid's 6'6", like 250, 260, and moves like a track athlete. He's freaking scary. And I think the thing about Mizzou that I'll give Drinkwitz credit for is his teams didn't quit on him the last 2 years, even when they had some kind of rough patches. And so like their schedule's kind of backloaded, coming to Georgia first weekend of November, and then they play Tennessee right after that, Florida after that, and then at Arkansas to finish the regular season. Like, I think if you go down that list of Tennessee, Florida, Arkansas, between Florida and Arkansas, I think one of those teams will have kind of maybe quit by that point in the year or not be as engaged as they should be. And I think Missouri will be. So I'm kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt there. But they returned 78% of their production as a team, 77% offense, 80% defense. Like, as you know, that's a lot. I think they have a good year, man.
Checking something real fast about the schedule.
Okay.
Real fast, because I want this is. I'm trying to see when that week 11 game. Who is it? Who do they have
for Mizzou?
Yeah, week Tennessee. 11. All right,
Tennessee.
I want them to be good. I changed my mind because I want Tennessee, Missouri to be the SEC game of the week, so that Ole Miss at Georgia can be a night game.
All right, fair enough.
To take that, that's not narrative at all.
Yeah, I mean, one guy that I tend to look at some is Brett Siaka at Pick Six Previews. Like, he's got his East rankings are 1 Georgia, 2 Tennessee, 3 Kentucky, and then he's got Florida and Mizzou tied for 4th. I think that's probably about right, but I think there's a world where Kentucky finally finds an offense but doesn't really have much of a defense, and Mizzou is able to knock them off and finish 3rd in the division. I don't think that's crazy.
Yeah, it's a pretty tough schedule for Kentucky. They got Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama.
Yeah.
So they're going to be tough to get over 4. They're not getting 5 wins, I don't think.
Oh, I agree with that. Well, wait, who's not getting 5 wins?
Kentucky. 5 SEC wins, sorry.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'm with you there.
Yeah.
I agree with you on that.
So that looks like if then you've got a 7-1, 7-1, or 7-1, 6-2 top half of the East, and then 4-4s and 3-5s and 0-8, 1-7, 0-8. Yeah, 0-8. I think we got an 0-8 Vandy year.
Oh, I think so too.
My Vandy grad just walked through. Sorry, Lee.
Hey, honey, Vandy sucks. Have a great day. So I guess let's just real quick on Kentucky. I think we both like Leary. I think it's hard not to like the receiver trio of Brown, Key, and Robinson. They might be the best 3 receivers in the SEC. Maybe we'll see. Like it's in the conversation, possibly. I don't know. You don't look so sold, but this program for the last few years under Stoops that's been really built on the offensive line, and like they had straight draft picks on the offensive line. You know, they had Goodwin and some of these studs up front. They bring Kenneth Horsey back, who was a guy that we kind of highlighted as a liability when they came to Athens 2 years ago. And we did our film preview and sort of predicted, I think we predicted that game pretty well, if I recall correctly. But man, like Eli Cox at center, 830 snaps last year, 58.1 PFF. The guard, Jager Burton, 49.3 PFF grade. Like they bring in a tackle from USC with 194 snaps in 2022. They bring in Tanner Bowles from Ohio State. Or I'm sorry, they bring in Tanner Bowles at guard from Alabama. They bring in Chrisman from Ohio State at guard.
Yeah, I mean,
it seems like they're relying on those kids. They got to be relying on them to be the O-line.
Exactly. And I mean, I think what we're learning out of portal, it's still, there's a lot of analysis on it, but O-line guys don't move much. D-line guys don't move much. So when they do, that tells you a little bit. And also when they're patchworking, and I don't know if it's a gap year for the recruiting or if they haven't recruited that position well, but I do believe that he can coach them up and that there is a pedigree there they'll be okay. I don't think it'll be one of their strengths of their offenses like it may have been in the past. To your point, I think I still got them behind Georgia and LSU and maybe Ellis, and maybe, like you said, Missouri's wide receiver room. So Devin Leary is nice, but so was Levis was supposed to be nice, and so I don't know. Till I see it, the team, like I said in one of your comments, they've never won 6 games in the SEC in a season. So I think somebody bold had them going winning 10 games. I don't know who that
was. A lot of people have been doing the hearing a lot of great things out of Kentucky camp this offseason, like lots of buzz around Kentucky thing. And I mean, if it's right, it's right, dude, but we'll see. I mean, they're still a 6.5 win total team in Vegas. And
I'm selling high on a Kentucky hype.
Yeah, I agree with you there. All right. Well, that's our East preview. It occurred to me this afternoon. I texted you to have your playoff field ready because we haven't put that out yet. And here we are, basically at 24 hours before we get rolling tomorrow night with a couple big games. Shoot, man. What you got?
I got a 2-loss Pac-12 champion USC getting in.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Finishing hot. And I think they've got that. They're going to I think the top of the Pac-12 is going to be exciting, and I think whoever comes out of there should be a playoff contender and worthy. And if it's USC, I think the hype and the TV sort of push to have them in, will be there. Give me a 1-loss Ohio State. Give me a undefeated Georgia, and give me a 1-loss Notre Dame.
Ooh, I like it, dude. I've struggled with this a lot, and I mean, the thing that I think you would agree with, and I feel pretty strongly on, is like every year it seems like we get a playoff team that's kind of out of nowhere. Like TCU was probably the greatest example, but I mean, we've had Michigan State in the past. We have had, I'm trying to think, we've had some years where it's like all, kind of blue blood or top
I
level
mean,
program. But
LSU was kind of be considered out of nowhere. They were one of the,
in 2019, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Totally. That's a good point. Yeah. I've got Georgia in the playoff. I'm not predicting how the playoff pans out because look, man, that shit's 4 months away and football games are about matchups and we just don't have the opportunity. Like we have not been given enough data to break down those matchups. And so picking a national champion right now, I feel like is it's fun and it creates conversation, but
if you could tell me how many pick sixes the Big Ten champion's going to throw, then I can tell you who's going to win the semifinal.
Yeah, I'm going Georgia into the playoff. I've got Washington. I've got a one-loss Pac-12 champion, Washington. I think they lose to USC in the regular season, and then I think they avenge that loss in Las Vegas in the Pac-12 title game. I really struggle with kind of how the Big Ten's going to play out, but I'm just not buying the Penn State hype yet, man. I saw what Michigan did to that defensive line last year. I think that
Me either.
I think Ohio State gets Michigan this time around, but I could see them losing a game somewhere else. So we'll say we got a one-loss Washington, a one-loss Ohio State, an undefeated Georgia, and the team I'm going to walk out on the ledge for here a little bit. I think they're kind of sneaking under the radar, but the 24/7 talent composite came out today, and they were top 5. I'm going to go with Clemson. I think Clemson comes back.
I was choosing between Clemson, Texas, and I just literally Notre Dame popped in my head, and I was just trying to figure out.
I thought hard about Notre Dame too, to be honest with you.
I mean, God bless us all for that Notre Dame USC game. If they're, it'll be fun. Yeah, it'll be fun.
Narrativeville.
It'll be the last year that they're not conference opponents.
Well, Notre Dame's still not in a conference, but
that was a joke game.
Maybe they will be now.
But by then, yeah,
strong-armed into
it. Anyway, well, yeah, go Dogs. I mean, I'm excited. We're here. We
I know, man. We did make it, and I'm excited to hopefully, we'll be doing a lot of this fall. And, with Clemson, I guess I should probably justify that pick a little bit besides just the raw talent thing. When I was at SEC Media Days, I got the opportunity to there was Texas and Oklahoma writers there kind of, laying the groundwork and getting ready since both teams are coming into the league next year. And there was a media reception the first night, and I got to chat with somebody who's extremely plugged in with not just like UT football, but just football in the state of Texas. And I asked him about Garrett Riley, who was TCU's offensive coordinator last year, and he's the offensive coordinator at Clemson now. And he was like, I talked to Sonny Dykes not long after Garrett left for Clemson, and I just kind of asked him what he thought about him, and he was like, man, the patience and maturity that he has for a young OC is just something you don't ever really see. And he was talking about how Sonny Dykes was saying in TCU's games last year, there was a lot of games where they would be behind, and Sonny would get on the headset and he would ask Garrett, like, is it time for us to start passing more? Like we need to play catch up. And Riley would be like, no, stay patient. Like, we're going to pop a run here soon. Stick to the game plan. And every time, Kendre Miller or somebody, boom, they would snap one off 70 yards. And obviously TCU, they went 12-0 in the regular season, made it to the national championship game because of kind of, I think, that patience. And I think that you put that at Clemson with some of the raw talent. I still have questions about Clemson's ability to play with the teams that they will have to face if they make the playoff. But I like them against Florida State, from a line of scrimmage standpoint. I think they're just a little more mature on the line. And I could see Florida State and Clemson splitting I could see them one team winning the regular season game and the other team winning the conference title. But I think that, Florida State, I feel like, is more likely to slip up somewhere else on the schedule. I think there's just a little more variance with what they're doing. And Jordan Travis, knock on wood, I hope he stays healthy for a full year, but that's not something that's been the case in the past. I think there's more chances for things to go south for FSU than there is for Clemson. I think Clemson's going to be able to run the ball pretty consistently. And, it's been my philosophy for a while here that line of scrimmage is really what matters when we talk about some of these big boy football games, even though everyone loves talking quarterbacks and receivers and all that. So, I think there's actually a very good chance we get a Georgia Clemson playoff semifinal game, which I think would be a blast, 1 versus 4 kind of situation.
And then we start off next year with them again?
No, I don't think – do they? Might be wrong. You're probably right, actually. Let's see. 2024. I know they've got a number of games. You're right. You are right. August 31st in Atlanta. Georgia might be given the opportunity to drop 2 straight L's on Clemson. Shout out to Hoops Mafia.
I was going to say Hoops has already got the tweet written.
He's already on what's that website? Tiger Droppings?
Tiger, yeah. Tiger Net, Tiger Droppings.
Tiger Net, yeah.
Yeah, he's deep cover, You've got dudes and you got Ukrainians blowing up planes deep in Russia. You've got Hoops Mafia deep in the Piedmont of South Carolina getting the intel off the boards.
My guy. Oh, any closing thoughts?
No, man. Have me back on. We'll talk some more. I got to go cook dinner. That's my
cook dinner. There you go.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for having me, Graham.
Yeah, thanks for everybody for watching. Enjoy the games this weekend, everybody. You get 5 straight days of college football. Follow Josh on Twitter at DogStats. You can find me at Graham Coffee DC, and we'll be out here doing the thing and following along every step of the way. So happy to be back.
All right, thank you, brother.
Thank you, man.